Are you extra ready? Good morning to my
Good
best friend.
morning.
You're a lot chipper. What are you wearing? What shirt is that?
That's a Rusty's custom shirt.
Of course, you're wearing your own merch. You're not even wearing mine. I see how it is.
Well, we all know who you are. Nobody knows who the fuck I am, so
Who
I
am
gotta do a
I?
little.
Who am I?
You are. What's his name? Tom Mulholland in disguise.
Son of a gun.
See, I know.
I agree with you now. When we last talked, or at least our last episode we recorded that had a little bit of some technical difficulties. You said you hate Walmart. So
Yes.
I went to Walmart this morning and it was like 6:40 something, and they don't open till 7 because of
Hmm.
coronavirus. I don't know
Yep.
what the fuck 7 o'clock is gonna prevent
It's
what.
the magic. It's the magic number.
Okay. So that aside, every time I go into a Walmart, there is always, like clockwork, a guy taking a shit. Doesn't matter what time it is, there's always one dude in the stall just lighting it up. And
Mm.
it's not, I don't understand why. Like, is that coronavirus? Is like that's where it manifests, is every day he's just brewing up a pot of it in the toilet. And I'm like, I don't understand. It could be 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 6, 7 a.m. Doesn't matter. There's a guy in there just like sounds like a duck is in the stall with him, just going, but it's his fart.
Well, that's an interesting reason to hate Walmart. I hate them for completely different reasons, other than the guy who's always taking a shit there. But
It's different people every time. It can't be the same dude. It can't be. Unless he
yeah,
works 24 hours and never goes home, like lives inside of the store, which you can do, I think, in a Sam's Club, but not a Walmart. Like you can't survive in a Walmart.
I recently read an article about people who survive in airports, who like live in airports
Yeah,
for
yeah.
extended periods of time. That was kind of wild. I was like, wow, and I never thought of it. I guess, and if I was a homeless person, or I guess if I was a person with a home who just didn't want to stay at my home, I could live in an airport.
Because nobody's
For
TSA is not going to be like, let's throw this guy out. And they're just like, I don't really care about my job that much. Like even when they're checking your bag, like if they pull you aside, TSA does, and they're checking your bag for like a bomb or something, they could stumble across like a pipe bomb and be like, you seem like an all
so
right guy.
the interesting thing about I don't know, I've never debunked this, but from what I understand, um on the show Adam Ruins Everything, he talks about the TSA and how they've actually never, they're part of security theater, and they've actually never prevented a anything from happening. Like literally nothing. Everything that ever gets like comes down the pipe from TSA is like handed to them by the FBI and shit like that. So like the FBI does all the footwork on it, and then like TSA does the like face work on it, and it's nothing that they even do. It's just security theater basically,
There's a
and I
show
get that.
called Disastrous Airways. It's on the Smithsonian Channel. I've been talking about a
Mhm.
lot. So if you watch that show, not one of those explosions of those airplanes is to do with a bomb factor. It's all just like malfunctioning of an airplane or some type of like random natural disaster, like lightning hits the airplane. So I'm like,
Mm.
my biggest thing, like I've been pulled over by TSA, so I can talk about this. When I was going from I think it was Vegas to Atlanta or something nearby there. It was like a 1.5 hour flight or something. But when we were going through check-in, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Our flight was going to take off at like 5. And some guy pulls me aside. He goes, "What's in your bag, man?" I'm like, it's not my bag, it's my cousin's, but I don't know, probably some juice boxes. My cousin's a diabetic, and they just start opening up the bag and pulling out multiple needles. And I'm like, oh my God. And it's like trying to explain, it's not mine, it's my cousin. He's a diabetic. And they're like, why are you carrying your cousin's bag? And I'm like, I don't know, fucking mismanagement. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. They pulled me out while I was taking a shit, and then we're headed to the airport. Like, that was it.
Damn. Yeah, I didn't. Congratulations, TSA. You did a good job. Oh, way to go.
I mean, if you're
I
basically
feel
gonna,
like
what's
that's,
what's the training to work at TSA? You just gotta make sure you look good in a blue shirt. Like, is that
I mean, it's probably pretty close to the same training that they're giving police officers these days, like smile, take a picture, put this person on the front lines and see what happens.
I think I would do a
I,
better job at picking out police people. I would look at because you could tell by looking at some people like that's a cop. That's a guy who looks like a cop. So I'll be like, you look like a cop. You're going to be a cop now. It's like, I want to be a banker. I don't give a shit. Cop.
You don't look like it.
He's like, well, I have mental disorders. I'm like, doesn't matter. Cop.
You know, I always thought I'd make a good undercover cop. You know, I spent a lot of time doing like shit I probably shouldn't have done as a youth and even into my young and middle adult life. But I don't know, I always thought like I looked like I would make a good undercover cop. Like I fit the part. I fit in. I could do this.
No.
Oh shit, we got an alarm going off.
You would look like a guy that would be the main suspect in, like, if I woke up in the bathtub filled with ice and my kidneys were gone.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I blend in really well.
That's the problem with society, is that a cop's salary isn't as much as you could make by selling somebody's organs on the black market. That is an issue that I think we need to fix. I mean, you mentioned something very, very important. You said about TSA, airports, and then you said homeless people. Like, you could basically live at an airport. So that is 100% true. Like, during the pandemic, the government was paying hotels to take in homeless people. You would get a large amount of money, but here's the issue: was they weren't actually taking in homeless people. They were saying they were, and they were getting a large amount of money. So then the government was like, if you really look at it, people complain that the government's really not helping, like funding a lot of things. They're actually doing a lot, but there's a lot of corruption when it goes to the pathways to actually fit into those systems, like the $850 million that was lost in New York because Balasio's wife just misplaced it. I'm like, fucking, if you really look at all of it, they're doing 400 something million dollars for homeless people in some places, and it's not going to the homeless people. They're just, you could give 1 million to each person, and you could get a shit ton of people off the fucking street.
You know, I've thought about that a lot in the past. You know, like you see all this money being dumped into these programs and stuff, but there's been times in my life when I've needed to use those programs. Those programs really aren't available for anybody to use. Like, I don't know how to get involved with any kind of social programs or whatnot. I've slept in bushes. I've, you know, slept in cars and around the corner from
What kind of
probably
bush?
your house a few times. Pyrocanthus is really warm, actually.
Are you
So
wait, hold on.
yeah, yeah, it's a thick bush. It protects you from the wind. No shit, man. Like, I mean, you know, as a youth, I've experienced a lot of shit, man. I told you, man. I've gone through a lot of things. You know.
You think that enhances your perspective on life because you've gone through so much?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I mean, I have seen things from a lot of different angles, man. I've owned my own businesses, and I've been homeless, and I've been everywhere in between. You know what I mean? I've worked for fast food. I've worked for Walmart. I've worked for, you know, like in all kinds of different things, man. Like I've worked as liaison for the NASA and the United States Air Force. You know what I mean? So I have a broad spectrum of experience, and because of my broad spectrum of experience, it has provided me with a lot of insight into like things that most people, I guess, just don't have experience with. I have to stop myself sometimes and think, like, I guess I don't realize that not everybody was a big time drug dealer in their life. Not everybody has had experience with hookers and strippers and strip clubs and the whole seedy, you know, life that goes along with that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't take that into account sometimes because I live those experiences. And to me, it's just like, you know, normal everyday life, you know, like, yeah, you know, what do you mean? You mean you've never, well, let's not go into that. What do you mean you've never done some of the things that I've done? You know?
I think
But
it's important. Like, would you agree with me on this? Is that a person needs to be seasoned a little bit? Like, you need to go through those hard times to create good times.
absolutely,
But
absolutely.
people ration it out to be like, well, you got to be, you got to be bullied a little bit. I do agree with it to an extent. I don't like the form that it is now, but I believe that, like, people, like, I've had people that were younger than me and like maybe still in high school, which I've talked to before on a podcast. I've done an episode before, mostly because I talked to his dad, then I talked to the son, and then I talked to the grandfather, which was like a whole generational thing on my show, which
That's
was pretty
cool.
cool. But when I was talking to him, it was so hard to get into an engaging conversation because the kid wasn't seasoned. He hadn't been through
Mhm.
really anything. He hadn't really lived a life. He was still going to school. Skateboarding was like the main thing we talked about. And it's like, when you really analyze it, there are some people where you look at them and they're like 15 years old, but they look like they've been through some shit. And
Mhm.
I think that's important for growth because it's much like when you if you're budgeting your, like for instance, about 3 or 4 winters ago, I didn't have a job. I was just working out twice a day, and that was all I was doing. I was going home playing video games all day, or no, working out twice a day, and just constant routine, sleeping, eating, working out, sleeping, eating, working out, gaming, all this type of stuff, all in a day's process where I was just bored all the fucking time. But I didn't have a job, so I had no money coming in. So eventually, I was scrounging around the house for quarters, nickels, dimes, all these things, enough to just buy a $1 drink. But then once I
Mhm.
started making money and saving up and shit, I was buying dumb shit, like shit from like my childhood I saw on the internet. Like, what fucking Bakugan for $40? That's a deal. And then I would buy it. And it's like, to really kind of keep that in your mind, like even though I have a lot of money saved up now, when I'm purchasing things, I don't like to spend a whole lot of money over groceries. I don't like to do these things. I still budget and I look for the deals. And people go, why don't you ever treat yourself? And I'm like, it's hard for me to even spend $5 on a shirt because once you open up that door to like $100 purchases, $200 purchases, the more money you make, the more you're going to be spending. And it's very hard to rationalize, after a while, instead of taking the extra mile trip to go get 2 energy drinks that are $3, instead you want to go to your work that has them for $6 for two. You're saving $3, but you go on the extra mile to go get that deal or something. It doesn't really matter because now you're like, I have the money to do so. It's like, I feel like people need to go through the bad shit, go through the struggling times to understand and really kind of grasp the flavor or the, I guess, the realness of what it is to actually have enough, to have things around you. You being homeless, for instance, going to now living in a home, you're much more grateful than a lot of people that are just never have to worry about being homeless, never have to worry about living on the street, never have to worry about living in their car, never have to worry about sleeping in a fucking bush. There's a lot of people that don't know what that's like. What do you mean the house doesn't have a pool? It's like you've never not had a pool with a fucking waterfall and two flamingos fucking beside it. You've never not had that. So you're not going to understand the gravity of the
Mm,
situation like that. That was a good scenario. Two
that was good.
flamingos fucking get it because they like to stand on one leg. So it's balance.
It's a very interesting mental image.
I like to paint a picture.
You do.
Broad
You're very
brushing.
Bob Rossy.
Thank you.
Yeah. But adversity builds character, I always say. And I think a lot of people say that. And I think it's true. The reason why we say things is oftentimes because they're true. Sometimes we just say things because we're parroting shit and we don't know. But yeah, adversity, I feel like builds a lot of character. Um, Without the bitter, it's hard to know what the sweet is. You know what I mean? If all we ever taste is sugar, how do we know that we like the taste of sugar?
Do you think it's going
Um,
to happen soon that we're going to understand what it's like when something goes sour? Because, like, did you see that North Korea said that thing about us?
that thing, I did not see the thing that
So
North Korea.
Biden happened to do some what I would call shit talking, where he said North Korea is an issue and we're going to have to handle this on a live television event. And then North Korea, Kim Jong Un, said a wonderful little thing saying, I'm tired of America and it's time we put a stop to this. We're not, and then so now we're in a dispute right now. And it was trending on Twitter saying World War III, North Korea, basically a bunch of signs of war of something that's going to be coming. And Kim Jong Un's like, stay tuned. So unless we make a public apology or something happens where Biden admits that he has dementia, then we're probably going to enter a battle zone. And I'm like, is that what we need right now? Like something to pull us together again? Or is it just like, because I feel like you can never have this idea of a utopia. It's never going to happen because when you get into the idea stages of a utopia, then you've never been through something like Atlantis, for instance. It was the perfect place they talked about, but it didn't
Mhm.
survive. It didn't make it because if it's a perfect place, you have no enemies. You just live in this peaceful society. Everyone's nice to each other and says hello to each other. You need the assholes. You need the
Mhm.
guy that cuts you off in traffic and sticks the middle finger up at you. And then you're like, what the hell? And then you want to get out and stab him with a fork. I don't know. But you need those in society. You need those moments because even though it sucks, you have to have them there because I think it creates an equal balance. You know what I
Well,
mean?
balance is important. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Again, if we all sat around in this, dystopian, utopian future where we all agree with each other, and some sort of 1984 like cancel culture. Oh, anyway, if we all lived in a society like that where we all had to agree with one another, it'd be fucking. Not only would it just be dull and boring, but it's wrong. You know what I mean? It's to force people into a particular opinion or a state of mind or thoughts or whatever. And everybody's got their own ways of manipulation. You know what I mean? Like you were talking earlier, all I could think about was consumerism, the consumerism mindset, how easy it is to fall into that. If we don't have, the problem is we have like all this influence around us, movies, TV, radio. I recently watched something. I think it's a Geico, maybe Progressive commercial or something, and it talks about, it's like how you fall into the patterns of your parents and stuff, and it's like we can't keep you from becoming your parents, but we can save you money or whatever. And one of the things that they said on there was, the guy says it's not programming, they're called TV shows. And I'm like, that's weird, because that's programming. What you just did is programming. You're trying to program somebody into believing that they're not being programmed by the shit that by their input. And what is input? Input is programming, and input is like what we take in and what we receive, what we perceive, and what we, And so, what are we being inundated with currently, constantly? Um,
Well, have you ever
Television
looked
shows.
inside of your own head, for instance, and wondered what thoughts are your own and which are fabricated by something else that has been inputted into your mind? Like for
So
the
that the Infinity commercial that just came out, and they're talking about, it's funny you should bring that up, because this is something I lecture about. I do guest lecturing, at the local junior college and
you
stuff
said
here,
it like 4 times. I
right?
listen to you when you talk. You know that, right?
Yeah, well, other people may not, and this may be the first time that somebody's listening to your
You're
podcast.
talking to me, not the people. I
Yeah,
talk
I'm
to the
talking.
people. You don't talk to the people. You don't have the right. I have the right. I am the voice of message. All will bow down to me.
Excellent. That was fucking badass.
What about the
Um,
Infinity commercial?
so the Infinity commercial, right? I think it's the Infinity commercial, and they're talking about, like the algorithms, and is this the real you, and what, like these companies think that by collecting this data and information on you and presenting you with like particular like personalized commercials and shit like that, that they know who you are, but only you really know who you are. And do we really know who we are? Because we have so many weird influences in our life: teachers, religious influences, media influences, our friends, and everybody's telling us what we need to believe and what we need to think and shit like that. And most of what they're telling us is wrong. Um, we find this out every day. Like, if you pay attention to if you believe in what the media says, first of all, you're fooled by most things, and second of all, like, if you don't, Denzel Washington says it best, man. If you don't listen, you're uninformed, and if you do listen, you're misinformed. And it's like, you're getting like all these influences and being inundated with all this information and misinformation from all directions, and everything is really boils down to like, what you decide to believe, and what you want to buy into. And it's kind of, it's a scary thing, because it's like, what do you believe? What do you buy into? You have your religious influences, your pastors and preachers and religious teachers, from the churches that we go to, and they're telling us this and this and this. But then we find out that, like, if you do any kind of research into it whatsoever, you find out, well, this is all influenced by a much older religion. It's all bullshit. What you're telling me is nonsense. These names aren't even real. This is something that was made up in 1886. um, and added to this book. We have, things like the Christian Bible, for example, the canonized Christian Bible, 250 something books that were discovered, 56 that were put into this uh, teaching, and then the rest of which were basically destroyed. Um, so
Well,
why
for
was all this
about
information destroyed?
for
You know,
probably because it was holding some secrets. I mean,
Absolutely. And it
Something
probably
like
wasn't
that.
really even destroyed. They probably just told us it was destroyed, and now it's housed somewhere in a secret Vatican basement under a fucking church or who knows what. Man, I
Can
don't
you
know. Fucking
imagine
Antarctica.
that? Like they tell you there's this giant fire of the great burning of Alexandria, and then all the books are actually still intact. They just lied to
Hmm.
you about this fire. And it's kind of like the easiest example, instead of using a religious example like you did, imagine saying like, okay, when I say lunch, what time do you usually think lunch?
Most people, I think, 11 o'clock, noon, 1 o'clock in that range.
Okay, well here's a perfect example. When I was talking to someone, they said I can't. I have to go to lunch. You're like, so you're hungry? No, no, it's lunchtime. And I'm like, why? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, exactly. You've been
Hmm.
told and you've been scheduled that 12 or 11 is your lunch. Is lunch,
Hmm.
lunch, lunch. But if you're not hungry, why are you eating? What the fuck?
Exactly.
But that's just how it's gone. And when I say how much of your thoughts are your own, for instance, and we'll get into this, but like I was wondering, like, because I was listening to a podcast and the guy was talking about like he was a journalist and he talks about how everything in our like Congress, all these major statues of government have like spies, and you can tell like if a Russian dude comes up to you and he has a belt all the way up to his below his nipples on his chest and he's like, I want to go get a drink, and you're like, oh, you're a spy for, tell me about your government secrets, that type thing. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, how much like they're spies. We know they're spies, but they're here and we're not saying anything because we just feed them misinformation, knowing that it's going to get back to them. It's like, why would you have a relationship with someone that you know is trying to spy on you, thinking that you guys already do not have the trust in each other, but you want them around you? It's so fucking weird to me. And I'm like, then it makes me think like, huh, we have people that we probably don't like and we like to, that we follow us on social media, but we'll post good things because we want them to see that we're doing well, so then they feel bad about themselves, like an ego or a revenge attack, manipulative, I would say. Then I'm like, are those thoughts because I'm thinking about this because of this and it's actually making me think this way? And then I have this one thought that comes in my head, like, imagine if I lift my leg up high enough, it'll change the sound of my fart. That's how I know that's me. That's me thinking right there. That fart thing is me. But everything else, when it comes to our government, when it comes to space, when it comes to technology, when it comes to all these things, are all these things I picked up from the podcast or listening to other things, or things that my brain has soaked up into the world. So it makes you question what is truly your own thoughts and what has been programmed into you that you don't actually think this way. A lot of people, if you ask them, when are you going to eat lunch? Some people say I don't even eat lunch. And it's like, but
Hmm.
what about breakfast? I don't eat breakfast either. It's like, but you're supposed, it's the most important meal of the day. Why is it? Nobody has a fucking answer of why it is.
Hmm.
It gives you suitable nutrition throughout the day. No, that's what they told you. That's a way that
Hmm.
the food industry lied to you way back in the beginning, so you would buy more things and get eggs and all these dairy products that they were trying to push. Then you start to look at things like, for instance, America is only a couple hundred years old, and nobody questions the fact that we're walking around here like it's been here for thousands of years. People say America's shit, America's doing this. I'm like, I think we're doing pretty damn fucking well for the fact that we're only a couple of hundred years old. Like Japan, for instance, 5,000-year-old history they can track. Us only a couple of hundred of years, and we're already one of the top dogs of superpowers. Even though that's a bad thing sometimes, we're still pretty powerful in the instance that nobody can really fuck with us a whole lot.
Hmm. Well, we did see a pretty quick rise to power. And I mean, there's a lot of, I don't know, we're told because it's, the abundance of natural resources that we acquired when we came here and whatnot. But I mean, look at the fucking size of Siberia. You think they don't have some fucking wood there? You think like they probably don't have coal in
Well,
Siberia,
Africa
Russia,
has like diamonds and golds and that a
Oh,
lot of.
let's talk about diamonds for a minute, man. Now I'm so glad that you just brought up the diamond product,
I
the
always say
diamond.
something that either triggers you or makes you happy. So fucking might
Yeah,
as
I'm
well be
triggered and
now.
happy at the same time. So we were just talking about like all this consumerism and the belief that this is that and this is the other, this that and the other is whatever is important and valuable and whatnot. And the De Beers Diamond Company happening, man.
Jesus Christ, Kelly, sit your phone down somewhere.
Hey, I'm trying to set up my tripod.
I'm getting motion sickness. Good God.
But I'm trying to set up my tripod here so that I can be hands free for a minute.
Every time we record, it's always you're moving around, taking a dump, or rolling a joint.
Yeah, well, I'm about to roll a joint, so.
Thought you quit smoking.
No, I quit smoking tobacco.
Okay, well, congratulations on that again.
Thank you. So the De Beers Diamond Corporation, like diamonds are basically one of the most worthless things you can possibly own. They have warehouses and warehouses.
It's a symbolism for marriage. What are you talking about?
Right? Uh-huh. That's something that didn't really exist until like the 30s, probably, or 20s, maybe the 40s. I don't know.
Push them diamond sales up.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And so we have like this really kind of a neat looking rock. It's got some interesting geological properties and stuff like that. But there's warehouses full of them, man. Like they put like this fake false, like they release like only so many a year and blah, blah. I tell you what, man, if you ever want to know the value of a diamond, go to Zales, buy a diamond ring, and then take that motherfucker to a pawn shop. They will not offer you anything for the stones. They'll offer you money for the gold, or the silver, the platinum, whatever precious metal it's set in. And depending on the type of setting that it's in, they may offer you a little bit of more money, but they're not going to offer you, like, literally the stones, the gemstones in any piece of jewelry are worthless. You cannot sell them, like, unless you sell them like to somebody else who doesn't know that you're selling them a worthless ass stone.
It's kind of what gets me pissed off when I see rappers with let's talk about MC Flavor, for instance. He's got the giant fucking Flavor Flav giant clock that's made of diamond studs all over the thing. And I'm like, how much is that? How much is that clock worth? Oh, it's like $80 billion. And I'm just like, why? What the fuck? Like, I don't think it even looks good. What is it? Because you have a lot of money hanging around your neck? You're just begging to get robbed. Remember when Kim Kardashian got robbed? For all that money she had, like $3.2 million worth of diamond jewelry or something like that. I'm like, what? I have nothing in my life that I would invest that much into that I would care about wearing. Like, I'm okay with a flannel from a fucking thrift store. I don't care. Like, I don't, even if I had the money to do so, I don't think I would want to be that rich to where I could spend money like that. Like, that's just, to me, that's just an unreasonable purchase when you could do so much more. Like, the issue with when people say, like, based on where you're from, like, okay, if you really want to think about it, America, for instance, anybody that's born here already starts out with a little bit more chips than another country like Africa. And the only reason that we've grown so much is because our land was a little bit fertile. There were reasonable things to be able to grow food, stay away from starvation. Africa, for instance, just had a lot of gold and diamonds, which is valuable to us once you build up a civilization. But when you're trying to feed the people, when they're eating diamonds, you're like, what? Why is your shit covered in diamonds? And it's like, that's all we have for food. It's like, it doesn't fucking help you when you're trying to grow your nation out. So they didn't even really have a chance. But now we've gotten to this manipulative point where we've grown so fast that we feel like we can go to another country and take control of it and be able to change it into our form, where I'm just like, can we just worry about ourselves? Like, I understand we want to be this, like, hey, let's all be democracy. Let's have democracy, not dictatorships. Fucking El Chapo. Okay, he's a bad guy, but he built soccer stadiums, he built all this stuff, and he took care of his people. And also they lived in fear. That's an issue. But still, like, can we have one dictator that's like, I'm going to fucking rule you all, but guess what? We're all going to have fun. We're going to sit down to Applebee's, have a nice Chili's hot plate come by. You know what I'm talking about, where the plate's so hot it's steaming as it comes by. I would be a dictator like that. I would own a cult with morals. I would be like, hey guys, let's have bowling night. And they're like, what? I'm like, bowling. They're like, but you just had us all chop our dicks off. I didn't do shit. You did it on your own accord. I just convinced you by using my manipulative tools of mastery.
You can look this up online. This is an actual fact. Cardi B cannot drive, but owns like 9 Lamborghinis.
You told me that before.
Dude, I'm just like, why the fuck do you have? Because they look good in pictures.
I'll say, yeah, I like the Sarah.
fuck? Like, seriously? Like, you know how much a Lamborghini costs? You know, like, you realize like you could have fucking like probably solved most of the fucking homeless problem in your city if you had taken the money from those 9 fucking cars that you own that you don't know how to drive that you want to take pictures with and invested it in things like social programs for the children and fucking like feeding fucking hungry people. You know what? I was a dictator, I have a perfect solution for 2 problems. You take all of the homeless people and feed them to all of the hungry people.
Oh my God. Why does that barbecue rib have a wristwatch on it?
Hey, we've been doing it for thousands of years, and suddenly, for some reason, fucking, it's just it's bad.
It's funny because the
Western,
Bible never discloses anything about cannibalism being a sin.
I don't know of any place, like, I don't necessarily know the Bible inside and out, but I've studied it pretty well, and I don't really know of any direct reference to where it says that cannibalism is necessarily a bad thing. It's something that was practiced worldwide by almost every culture in the world up until like 3 days ago. And it probably still is. I'm pretty sure. Like, even in like what we would consider to be some of the most advanced countries in the world, they still practice cannibalism. Like, I guess like not so long ago, there were some death metal dudes like who went up into Sweden and fucking ate each other at a cabin because that's what you do for each other when you are dying or whatever. I don't know. But a lot of cultures do that. They eat their dead or they eat their enemies or they consume each other for magical properties and to become to
Enhance
take
yourself with
on
the wisdom
and
of the
yeah and
person
help.
you eaten.
Thank you. Exactly. Yes. So as you can
Doesn't mean
tell,
it's
I
right.
obviously haven't eaten anybody recently because I'm having a hard time enhancing my wisdom currently. But
I just think you're just waking up. That's probably why.
I've been awake about an hour or so, but it's been a pretty rough morning for me. So yeah. Um, but for the most part, like a lot of the things that we say are bad or whatnot are like really common practices.
It's been rough because you haven't had your muffin on a drill press, I'm guessing.
I have not actually had a muffin yet this morning. I was trying to think of what I was going to have this morning, and I'm just eating crackers on what I call the Marty Crane.
I want to get a parody of you with like, on Goldmember where he's like, would you like a pipe and a grape? A bong and a blitz? A cigar and a waffle? I just want to get you like a muffin on a drill press. Um, if you really think about it though, like think deeply about it. If I gave you $1 billion, what would be the stupidest thing you would buy compared to the one thing you would do beneficial, either to yourself or to others? You don't have to do it just because we're recording and you want to seem like an all high mighty person. What would
Oh,
you actually do with your money? Because for me, my dumb purchase would be I would invest into the saltine business, like the saltine crackers, and I would buy a big portion of it. So I would own unlimited saltines. There's nothing I can fucking do with them, but I would like to build a fort, maybe of saltine crackers. That's what I would do with like a small portion of it, and the rest I would try and find like a good. I would probably start a charity, but like my own charity because like I want to start a charity for something rare, like people that can't see the color red or people
mm,
that can't say their alphabet backwards. I feel like those people
nice.
need like a better highlight in life. Too many people
Dude,
donate to the people with no legs. I'm like, hang on a second.
right? Everybody's donating to the guys with no legs. Who's donating to the guys? I can't say the alphabet backwards. I'm
Use
always
your
thinking about
hands,
that,
motherfucker. Walk on your hands.
right? I'm like, I get to like Z, uh, XYZ. Yeah, so ZYX. Look at that. See, I got one letter into the alphabet backwards, and I had to stop and think about like what's the next letter. And I've
You're my
always, my
prime
whole
candidate.
life, dude, my whole life, I've worried about sobriety tests because of that. Because I'm like, oh, first of all, I can't walk in a straight line whether I'm stone cold sober or not. Like fucking one foot in front of the other. Yeah, right. Whatever.
If a cop asked me to say my alphabet backwards, I'd be like, I want another test. I want a
Absolutely.
different cop.
Right. How you say your alphabet backwards, motherfucker? Like I said, I'm sitting over here like Z. Next is I say XYZ, so Z X Z. See, look at that Z
The real
X.
programming is
It's not even right.
can you say the alphabet without singing the song?
Can you say the alphabet without singing the song?
Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet without singing the song? Can you say the alphabet w
That I can do. I can also like name all the states in alphabetical order
The fuck's wrong with
for
you?
some fucking reason. I don't know.
It's a good bar trick if you want a free beer.
Maybe so. Should we
Doesn't
try Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Hawaii, Idaho, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, North Dakota, North Carolina, North Dakota, Ohio, Oklahoma, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, Wisconsin, Wyoming. Yay.
congratulations, you're a fucking loser. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, don't ask me how I know that, like why I know all the states in alphabetical order, but it's something like I've been able to do
You
that since
missed
I
one
was.
though. You missed one.
No, I
There's about
didn't.
to be 51 states because Washington's, or no, yeah, 51 states because Washington's branching off into another state now too. So now there's going to be 2 states in Washington.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's crazy because so we were talking about you were talking about the Infinity commercial. I thought you were going to mention the FBI commercial that just came out. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's
Hmm.
like it's a commercial for the it's I don't know if it's FBI or CIA. I think it's the CIA. There's a commercial. It's a woman walking, and she goes, "I am a uh, is it asexual woman with a disability," and all these things where it's like they just took every language of woke language and put it into a commercial where it's like I'm also a woman of African descent and then all this type of stuff. And then you're like, what? And then it gets to like people are making fun of this commercial because they're like the CIA just stole woke ideology and turned it into their
Hmm.
own manipulation thing. And you're watching it and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like, what are we doing? Like, they're getting so much blowback right now because it's like, are you trying to act like you're fitting in? Because I feel like now people are going to have a big pushback against being woke because now it's just like, what are we doing? Is it just for promotion? You're putting it in a commercial because you feel like it's going to resonate with people? Like, what fucking person's watching it? Like, yes, that's what I'm talking about. I'm like, no, what else? You're fucking growing organs in a monkey. Can we talk about this? What the hell?
Dude, whenever I talk to people about like common trending issues and stuff like that, the majority of people that I talk to are like, you know, like what the fuck is happening in the world today? And then like you got like one or two people out there who are like, and it's not even people that I know, it's like people that I see on social media and shit that are like you, yes, I'm part of this movement, and like this is all about me. And it's like my question is like by forcing all of this acceptance and all of this whatever, isn't that like kind of doing exactly what they're saying they don't want done, which is, I don't know, like
I think it's just everything's ass backwards.
alienating? It's, well, like I'm tired of being alienated, so I'm going to alienate you for a while and see how you like it.
Well, if you force someone to change or you force someone that they need to do so or they're going to be punished, then you're not really getting real change. You're getting someone that is just doing it because they're afraid. And it's like, this is where I
Sure.
say utopia is never going to happen, is because we all know people that we talk to where you're like, how the fuck did you survive this long? And then we all know that someone looks at us with the same exact way. Someone is above us, like, fucking, how have you survived this long? There's always someone that's a step above somebody else in some category or some portion of life. But the issue is that those people want to push the other people down and hit them with something. And then now we've somehow thought that the whole entire world is being like suppressed or oppressed, and now people are starting to fight a fight where there's not really even an issue. We're just tearing each other apart. You'll walk into someone in a store or something and be like, fuck you, you're suppressing me, and the guy's like holding sea salt in one hand and ground pepper in the other, and he's like, I'm fucking trying to figure out what I'm going to season my steak with tonight. And you're like, I,
Right.
I don't care, you're cancel you. It's like, what are we doing? Can like we talk about the fact that we're about to go to
Cancel you.
war with fucking Korea? Not that this guy's trying to figure out how he wants to barbecue or season his steak tonight. I'm not really worried about that. I'm more worried the fact that we're sitting inside of a Food Lion and arguing with each other over whole food shit when we should be focused on the fact that, like, hey, how are people on the street getting to their jobs? How are we being a fundamental community and actually being a benefit to society? Because right now it seems like our progress is going forward and also going backwards at the same time. What are you eating now?
I'm eating a cracker.
Is this my
Cheddar
saltine
cheese.
business?
No, they are Austin. I'm gonna do
Of
my
course, the
plug
fucking
here.
peanut butter ones. Nobody eats the cream
No,
cheese ones. If you eat
this is
those, you're a
cheese.
psycho.
These are cheddar cheese.
You're
Cheddar cheese on cheese sandwich cracker.
that's too much dairy.
It's not even really dairy.
Cheese and
It's like,
cheese
well, it's all fake though. It's powder. It's not like it's actual dairy products.
doesn't make a better fight for your intestines. Like it's just at this point, it's like it's just powder. It's not real cheese. It's like okay, so you're just proving my point even more. You're already hurting yourself, and now you're munching down, and my audience gets to hear some ASMR.
Well, you know, that's
I
what they
can
get.
hear how dry it is in your mouth right now. Like
Oh yeah, dude.
that's how bad that powder is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty Sahara Desert right now. Going back to what you were saying just a second ago,
You need a drink of water. I could tell that swallow looked dry as fuck.
yeah. Going back to what you were saying though about, I mean, again, it's like it's more consumerism. It's more consumerism. It's more of what we're being fed, what we're being told to believe, the lies that, that we don't want to stop to try and, decipher or the bullshit that we don't want to wade through. It's more of that. It's more of that. It's more of that compounded, piled on top of each other. More instances of it, more instances of it, more influences. Nobody stops to think for themselves. Nobody stops to really give a shit. You know what I mean? Like about their fellow man or even about themselves. I mean, look at like how much like look at the shit we put into our bodies. Okay, like my crackers aside, let's talk about things like you asked me like what would I do if I was given a bunch of money? Like what's one ridiculous thing that I would like to do? Um, I would like to do something like buy, and of course, $1 billion isn't enough to do it. I don't know if $1 trillion is enough to do it, but I would like to buy like the McDonald's restaurant chain and just shut it down. Like, boom, just all up. No more McDonald's. I just bought it and closed it.
About to say
Why?
$1 billion is definitely not enough. They've served over like 9 billion, and they're
Right.
like charging $1.75 per burger.
Right. So, I mean, like, I don't know. Like, if you gave me $1 billion, I don't know. I don't know what I would do that would be funny. But if you gave me $1 trillion, I would buy the McDonald's Corporation, or I would buy someplace like Walmart or something, one of these big conglomerates that's just fucking killing people and killing businesses around the country, and just shut them the fuck down. Just boom. It would just all in one day. Just all bam. Just a shock, culture shock. You know what I mean? Just to see what fucking people would do. Like, what the fuck? There's no more McDonald's? Like, I was just here yesterday. Like, it's closed. What happened? And I wouldn't say anything to anybody about it. I'd want it to be like really hush hush, just kind of quiet, just like, oh yeah, you know, Elon Musk decided to buy McDonald's and shut it down. That would just be my funny thing to do, I guess. I don't know. And I'd like to see the reaction of people. Like, what would happen? Like, what would people think? Like,
They just go to fucking Burger King. What do you mean? Like,
no, they like. I don't know, man. Is there even Burger Kings anymore? We had 3 here in my town. They're all closed.
no, we got Burger King, we got Taco Bell. I think the only thing we don't have is a Wendy's.
You know, that movie, Wendy's. Oh, we do have a Wendy's. Carl's Jr. recently closed down here. Um, I'm seeing like there's like these like mega monster corporations that are pulling ahead right now. And it all kind of reminds me of, I think it's Demolition Man is the movie where Taco Bell is the only restaurant in the future. So like every restaurant, there's like fucking 40 different restaurants to choose from, but they're all Taco Bell. It's like,
It was like kind of
so
like the big fear when you found out a lot of small businesses were closing down during the pandemic and only the giant corporations were kind of being left. It was like Netflix, for instance. Like Netflix started releasing a bunch of stuff when movies, theaters got closed down. It seemed like it's all going to switch over to streaming services, and movie theaters are only going to be on weekends like it is now. It's like eventually corporations like Walmart and these giant businesses that have billions and billions of dollars are going to be the only ones left, and you're going to be reduced to now you're going to have to do online shopping. And I'm like, all right, There's a scary thing about that because I still like going to the grocery stores and side markets and doing that type of thing. But maybe we can find, like, for me, I feel like the best funding of $1 billion would be able to recreate like an organization such as, like, let's call it Recreate Recreational, which is like all these buildings that aren't being used, all these homes that have nobody living inside of them. If you can't put a homeless person inside of them, then let's try and find a way like this, where you destroy it. You find these amazing spots or places and start growing some land back, start growing some ambient nature. You need more nature around you to create a little bit of peace sometimes. I mean, let's use the example of a person driving and he's about to fight a person in front of him for going 10 miles under the speed limit. When they get out of the car, you're not going to fight if you're in front of a nice, beautiful water fountain or a park or a beautiful architecture or some type of landscape. The Greeks knew about this. The Romans knew about this. When you're building a civilization, you need things that are going to morally keep people happy. Those are things such as landscapes or decorative things such as statues, such as
Parks and
obelisks, all these types of things. Whether it's
art
for
installations.
Yes, whether it's for a
Correct.
place of worship, you need these types of things because it gets people's attentions and it kind of distracts them from a lot of own personal issues as well too. The issue is if you try and create an organization where you start funding people to be nicer to other people, you're incentivizing kindness, but you're also doing it in a very bad way because now people are only going to act nice because they feel like they're going to get paid if they do. Same thing with China and their social credit system. When you do something that's in right with the government, you get paid or you get a tax break or you get some type of good credit onto you. But it's ratting out your fellow neighbor. It's not beneficial,
Mhm.
but that creates a snitch society, much like we're living in now. More people are willing to call over a house party. I think in Canada it just happened. They got, I think, there was a 10-person party during their lockdown because they're in lockdown right now. There was a 10-person party. Each person that attended the party got fined $2,000. And you're like, what the fuck are we doing? And it's like, it might not be us, it might be Canada, but it happens over here too. There are parties that happen where people call the cops because they feel like this is a sense of power. They're going to ruin someone else's fun. Now, should those people be partying because of the restrictions that you're under? I don't know, because who the fuck is telling you you need to stay home? I'm seeing pictures of people saying, finally, after a year and a half, I can have a family picture. And it's like, what the don't act like you have not seen your family in a year and a half. I know for a fucking fact you probably saw them on Christmas. You probably saw them on some type of birthday or fucking holiday. You're not doing it because now you got the shot and now it's just been unlocked to you, like they've been locked behind a wall or something. No, but now you're able to post it publicly on social media. And the fact that you're so happy that you need to post a picture to let everybody know you're fucking finally, you're vaccinated, you can be with your family. That's where I see bullshit. That's what I don't like. I don't like living in a world where you can't tell someone's true intentions because it's so clouded by what people want you to think, what you have to be, and all this other type of shit. And it creates schizophrenia. It creates so much imposter syndrome where you don't even know who the fuck you are anymore.
Well, isn't that, I mean, that's really what it is. It's really what everybody, I mean, we're all putting on a show for somebody at some level, at some point. Um, I don't think anybody is 100% transparent. I'm a pretty honest guy, but there are aspects of my life that I'm just not going to share with people. You
The
know what I
cult
mean? Like,
experience.
no, and I mean, I don't necessarily want to experience, I don't necessarily want to share it publicly, but I'm willing to talk about it at some point. You know what I mean? Like I said, we discussed it, you know, like there'll come a point where you and I will sit down and have some conversations about it. And,
Can you
you know,
imagine
you'll,
being in a group of people with robes and they're feeding you those fucking crackers you just ate? That's toward. Can I get a glass of water? And you're like, no, you must suffer in the eyes of our Lord and Savior, the Bebop Comet. And you're like, but they're so damn dry. Like, they're drier than a saltine. I heard it when you were eating it. It sounded like you were chewing on bark or dust. Yeah,
I
look,
was,
yeah, take a sip of that water.
I'm about to. This is
Wash
the
it
second. See,
down.
I had two crackers with no water. Now I'm gonna have some water.
You ever try
I
the
don't know. I'm
saltine
afraid.
challenge where you have to eat 6 in a row without any water?
I don't think so. That
It
doesn't
sucks up
sound
all your
great.
saliva.
Oh, I bet.
You're dead after that. It's like being in the middle of the Sahara Desert and someone hands you seawater and you're like, you're hurting me even more.
Can you do them all at once? Can you just eat 6 or do you have to eat one at a time?
I've never been that bored. Like the guy who makes my t-shirts, he's an awesome dude. Shout out to Adam. But he told me on an episode, he was like, yeah, my wife shaved my chest. And I'm like, why? And he's like, well, we're bored. And I was like, fucking rent a movie. Rent a movie. I don't care what you do. Fucking pick your nose hair. I don't give a shit. But good God, you're adding a bong on top of that? Really?
Yeah.
We're on a show where you have to talk and you're about to have the
could you
worst
see
dry
that?
mouth.
I can't believe you guys could see that. I
You
thought I was
showed it
being
up to the camera.
incognito.
Is that like, wait, are you doing what the girls do in all the photos or what people do in photos where they hold up a beer and a picture and then they set it down? It's like, you didn't even drink that party, but you held up a beer so everybody sees you're partying out. That's fucking weird. Why do you have to show people, hey, everybody, I'm partying. And it's like you're holding up a beer. It's like, fucking put the beer down and take a goddamn photo like a fucking champion.
Isn't that like exactly what we were just talking about though? Like everybody's putting on a show for someone. Hey, look, there you are, man. You're not even really drinking that. That was just like, dude, are you getting paid by that company to show that can on the air?
I mean, if Diet Sam's Cola really
it's
wants
not even
to pay
open,
me,
dude. It's
it is
not even
open.
open. That's bullshit, dude. Oh yeah, right.
About half. I need to cut down on these. My peas coming out like motor oil.
Oh man, I don't drink any of that stuff, dude. I drink water.
Looks like it's at this point. It looks like it's coughing out. Just pee.
I gotta crash out this fucking half-cashed bullshit.
You need to clean that thing out. It looks like
brown. Dude, this is after like a week of like I clean this out like once a week, man.
It reminds me of Harold and Kumar where he's like, don't I have rights? Don't I have rights? And he goes, you want your rights? And he takes the Bill of Rights and wipes his ass with it. And he goes, there's your Bill of Rights. And he goes, don't you ever clean your ass? Don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
Exactly. This thing is cleaned like once a week, man.
If you have one question,
how much I consume.
If you could have one question for a higher power, such as maybe a government or maybe a higher existential being, what would you ask? Who would you prefer to ask to? Would you prefer to ask our government any question and get the 100% answer to it? Or would you prefer to ask a higher being or alien a question?
Well, see, if I asked the government, it would be like, are there aliens or higher beings? And so then if I just knew there were higher beings, I wouldn't have to ask the government anything. So, and then, I often think about this. This is funny because this is something I spend a great deal of time thinking about is like, what happens when we die? What happens when we die?
It looked like I was
okay.
Jerking something.
I was like, what? I was like, what? I'm not wearing my glasses. So I'm like looking at you and I'm going like, what is he doing?
Tossing salt over my shoulder.
Yeah, little good luck there. So, if I got to ask the government a question, it would be like, are there aliens or higher powers? And so if I just knew there were aliens or a higher power I could ask, Nessie, you put me on the spot. And like, this is something I think about a lot whenever, I'm by myself, and that's a lot. So I don't really know what I would ask. Like, I just want to know, like, what.
It's like a genie with 3 wishes. Don't fuck yourself over.
Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go when I die? Like, I really want to, and then like, I'll just die and find out probably and be fucked. I would ask the wrong question. Exactly. I fucked myself already over, already.
Why would you ask the government? Where do I go when I die?
Not the government. I'm talking about an alien or a higher power. Yeah. See, so my question for the government would be, are there aliens or higher powers? And so since I have the option of asking an alien or higher power, I don't need to ask the government shit. Because they're just even if they told me the truth, I think it was a fucking lie. But
I would ask the government if we had clones.
Oh, I'm sure we have clones, dude.
I just saw a documentary about this. You ever heard of Imposter Syndrome?
No. I yes, but no. Not like I couldn't speak on the
So
topic.
imposter syndromes, like you have like sometimes you could have an overinflated ego, or you could think you're more
Hmm.
important than you are. Or you could also, it's kind of like the Truman Show, where like everybody around you is kind of like you think they're playing an act or they're fake people. They're not really real people. This dude had imposter syndrome of a certain variant, but he also had schizophrenia on top of it. So he thought he was a clone. And I watched this whole entire documentary about this guy where he thought he was a clone, not his true self. And he knew that. So he thought everyone around him didn't know. So he had to keep it under wraps. And he eventually was like coming to the grips with like
Wow.
suicide and all these things, but he couldn't trust anybody around him because they thought like the original him died in a car crash or some shit. And he was like freaking out. Like he just somehow in his brain, he got himself convinced with this paranoia, schizophrenic type thing where he had to isolate because he thought everyone was out to get him at some point because they were starting to figure out that he was a clone and that he figured it out himself. So he's trying to find out who he really is. And then he starts like trying to like figure out where his like true self is. And then he was coming to grips like is he like had a map and everything pinpointed of like here he's either in this location, he's in this location, he's in this location. And he's like he isolated himself from everybody in fear that he was a clone and people were going to find out because he was going to mess up somehow, his programming was going to mess up. And I'm like, I would like to know if they're because we clone animals. So what's the stop? Like I want to see the trash bin of the things that you clone. Like, I wanna see, like, a person with one eye, and it's like, we keep him in the fucking basement. It's like, oh, like Goonies.
Oh, I'm sure, dude. Like, you know, the military industrial complex is so like has so much freedom. Like private corporations have so much freedom to do things that the government can't necessarily do, which is why the government does things like contract with Bigelow Aerospace and Skunk Works, Human Skunk Works, like so in that they like I don't remember the name of the scientist who worked for the Skunk Works, but like back in '94, he made the statement of like we possess the power to take ET home, and basically like, we we have the technology to travel to the stars. Um, and he wasn't talking about when he says like to the stars, he wasn't talking about like cislunar space. He was talking about like the Andromeda galaxy and shit. And so having worked on projects for the Air Force in the past, um, I'm privy to the concept that that like military, the government's military projects are 50 years in advance of whatever we see in the private sector, but the private sector's version of that is probably 500 years more advanced than the US military because they work without regulation, you know, without these checks and balances and oversights and stuff like that so they have the ability to do things and to go places and to work with stuff that we the US government doesn't get to do because they do have certain checks and balances in place. Even like groups like the CIA that are like above top secret and shit like that, like I don't think that they can really even pull off the same shit because they probably lack the funding that the private sector
Do you think that
has.
they hide that information because they think we can't handle it, or they always wanna be a little bit more advanced than us? Because in my
They
mind,
just always want to be more advanced than us, I think. I don't think it's that we can't handle it. I mean, most people are fucking piss stupid anyway,
well,
you know.
my mind goes to like imagine if a bunch of CIA people decided like, hey, let's this Tesla thing, it's kind of way out of date. It's by 500 years. Let's pick a random scientist who seems like they're ahead of their generation and that can kind of craft out something. They picked Elon Musk. They knock on his door, say, here are the plans for this car, this Tesla type thing, and it's going to make you a lot of money. So everything that Elon's actually creating has been handed down to him because he's the best scapegoat to be able to be like, oh, that's plausible if this guy's creating all this type of stuff and it's so innovative for us when really they're like, that's fucking 500 years ago technology.
Right. Well, yeah, I think that a lot of that probably is the case. Um, and what's weird is like you got like guys like Elon Musk, and he's supposed to be like one of the richest men on the planet, but he's involved in like the most stupid shit in the world. Like fucking big deal. Okay, some electric cars. Let's look at what like Bigelow Aerospace is doing. and the AATIP program, and investing the money that they're investing into things like Skinwalker Ranch. Why are they investigating this? Why are they investigating this area? Why are they dumping so much money into that? People talk about, like, we want disclosure about the UFOs and about fucking aliens and ghosts and monsters and blah blah blah. Well, look at where the money is spent. You think that the fucking United States government is in the fucking business of spending $22 million a year or over a 4-year period or whatever the fuck it is into chasing fairy tales? No, there's something to that. You know what I mean? Like, NASA's interested in Chaco Canyon for some reason. NASA's an aerospace corporation. You know what I mean? They're not like, why are they looking at ancient Indian ruins in the middle of New Mexico? Because there's more than meets the eye to these locations. There's more than meets the eye to these ideas. And if you want disclosure, follow where the fucking money goes and where it's coming from. And so, like, like, if Elon Musk is the richest man and one of the richest men on the planet, why isn't he, chasing down some of this information? Why isn't he doing some research into some of these things, or is he? And it's just shit that he's not talking about. The stuff that he talks about publicly and it's like, I don't know,
Do you
the
think the
Tesla cars and
government
stuff that are.
do you think the government has like a vault somewhere with like a bunch of like old shit that we don't know about? Like for instance, like you walk into the vault, you can pull out any item. They have a fucking genie lamp in there. And you're like, what is it? Is this fucking a prop? They're like, rub it. And then you fucking rub it and the genie comes out. You're like, what? It's like, yeah, we got a bunch of shit locked away. All those old school rituals and all those things you read in religious texts. It's all real shit. But guess what? We thought at one point they were higher than us, and now we've locked them up. Who's the bitch now? And you're like, whoa, man, this is gonna backfire like Cabin in the Woods when all them fucking monsters came out and killed them kids.
That's a distinct possibility. I don't know that necessarily that I
There's one
mean,
alien in that vault, like, motherfucker, let me out. I need to go home. I left the oven on, and you probably burned my fucking house down. I got the
you know,
babysitter on the clock. I'm fucking been here 50 years. I don't even know what that bill I'm walking into is like.
right? I don't necessarily know that it would be like the government that houses the information like that, but I could see that, like, maybe the Pope is got like a secret room someplace.
That's
The
the
Vatican
Vatican.
is in charge. Yeah, well,
They got
yeah, that's why I
over
was going there.
6.5 million pieces of text in the Vatican. And I think every year, no, 6.5, yeah, is it million or billion pieces of text in the Vatican? And they've been transferring it over since 2012, all to documentation on a computer.
Digital, right?
Yeah, in
Right,
case the fire ever happens again.
right. The fire.
That sucks, dude. That's the biggest thing in my mind where I was like, if I could go back in time and if I had to choose another option besides meeting Leonardo da Vinci and being able to watch him work, I would love to be able to go to the Fire of Alexandria, like the library. Like,
Mhm.
that's the thing, though, is if you ever get a scenario where you meet another being and they give you anything you want, but there's always a twist to it, like the monkey's paw, they're going to be
Mhm.
like, I want all the information of the world, all the knowledge of the universe at my fingertips, but they're just going to lock you in a giant library with all that fucking information in there, and you're never going to be able to expose that to the world. You don't have Twitter, you don't have Instagram, you don't have anything.
Yeah, it's like I said a while ago. When you asked me that same question, I said, well, I would ask, well, what happens when you die? And then of course they would kill me, boom. And so I wouldn't be able to tell anybody. Like, they wouldn't just give me the answer. It would be my monkey's paw. It would be like, oh, you want to? That's a simple one. Now you're dead.
Can you imagine if you're like you die, you're just falling for eternity?
It could be. Who knows?
Maybe death
We
is
don't
like
know.
when you die, you're just in like when the cartoon has no background, when there's just a white background, there's nothing. Maybe that's it. There's just nothing.
So I tend to think that along like a scientific and religious sort of like context together, like combined. I believe that we are energy, we're electromagnetic beings. I believe that we resonate with some sort of frequency. Um, and I think that frequency is measurable. And I think there's a difference between positive energy and negative energy. And I definitely think that this, our physical being has the ability to conduct electricity and energy. But when this battery sort of like the housing sort of stops conducting the energy has to go someplace. And I think that's where we get the idea of like heaven and hell is like, do we live our lives with a negative energy or a positive energy? And really, who's like, how do we put a differentiation between negative and positive?
Maybe the world survives off our energy, and then we've just learned to maybe a good energy or positive one makes the world be in a better spot. But if it's just learned for so long with the amount of pain that it's been experiencing that the world has now learned to feed off our bad energy, but it runs at like half capacity. So we're only getting 50% of its true potential.
That's definitely kind of where I was going with this, as far as like, but the real question is, what's negative energy? What is negative energy?
When
People
someone
have asked
calls
me
you a
questions, and
cock,
well, is it though? Because
have you
is
ever
it
been
really
called a
negative?
cock before?
I've been called a cock lots of times.
It doesn't feel fucking good.
It doesn't feel
When I
bad.
call
It
you
depends on the
handsome, you feel
situation.
good, right? But when I call you a
Well,
fucking psychopath, you feel bad.
not necessarily. It depends. Is that the image I'm trying to portray? Perhaps I'm happy that I portrayed that image.
If you
But
were trying to
if
portray
I'm
that
trying to
image
be
in
a
our
dick,
last episode,
yeah.
then yes, that's a
By
psychopath.
the way, our last episode was filmed on 420 and it was supposed to be the Cinco de Mayo release. So, in honor of our last episode here, I'm going to go ahead and hit this.
That's the worst excuse to do a fucking bong hit I've ever heard. That's like, hey, it's raining outside. Guess I better get high. It's like, whoa, wait, what the fuck does the
Oh,
weather
man,
have to do with your fucking weed?
it's sunny outside. I think I'll get high.
It's a fucking stoner excuse, and I like
So,
it.
but go back to what I was saying here for a second. Um, as far as this positive and negative energy, I've been asked a question a number of times in my life. So, like in the Bible, it says, "Thou shalt not kill." What does that mean? What is killing? Killing isn't necessarily taking of another life because sometimes that's required.
Well,
And
what's
so
worse, physical pain or emotional pain? Because if you kill someone's soul, that to me is killing.
if you kill, you can tell a lie and that's killing the truth, right? But so thou shalt not kill. Let's talk about the physical act of killing for a minute. um, there's different ways to look at that. So, like one is as from an aggressor standpoint, from the viewpoint of the aggressor, and that is that I'm going to come and take something from you, or I'm going to impose my idea upon you. I'm going to cause some sort of physical harm to you,
Does
up
it?
to and including the point of up to the point of killing you and taking your life in order to get this idea across or whatever. Now, if you come at me as an aggressor and you have an idea that you're trying to force on me, or you have something about, you're trying to take something from me, I have a possession that you want, and you are aggressively coming at me, or somebody in my family or my friends, and I end your life in self-defense, in an act of defense, is that still killing? Well, in my opinion, no. Whenever it says thou shalt not kill, it means like don't take the role of the aggressor, but it doesn't necessarily mean not to take the role of the defender. And if I have to kill you to defend what's mine, or if I have to kill you to defend my family or my friends, that's not, am I going to be judged as a murderer for that? Is that a negative thing? I ended somebody's life. That's killing. Is that a negative? Not necessarily. That could be positive, and there could be positive experiences that come from that, because the next person who comes and sees that you've killed that person for trying to do harm to your family or whatever, they'll stop and think twice before they commit this act, and so maybe it will save their life by doing so.
Okay, you're probably the best person to ask this question to then. Do you think that there are people that are unredeemable? I see. That's how you know it's a good question when you got to take a deep breath like that, and we're about 20 seconds in. You still haven't gave me an answer. I like that.
I think that There has to be somebody who's unredeemable.
I don't agree.
And do you believe we live in an infinite universe
I
where
believe
all possibilities exist?
I believe that each individual person probably has something that they can connect to the most and something that could pull them out of something the most, such as like if Superman has a superpower being like all this amazing abilities, but then his weakness is kryptonite. I believe everyone has something about them that is super connected where they can be like, maybe you like a certain flavor of gum and that is your weakness. You love this gum so much, but to everyone else it's terrible. Well, if a person we consider unredeemable, the only reason why the death penalty has just been abolished in, I think it was like a month or so ago in Virginia, it's like the 23rd state to abolish the death penalty, is for so long the death penalty was seen as when someone is unredeemable, you give them death because it's just so much easier to isolate the problem than, spend all this resources trying to fix it. And I'm like, I just don't think you've tried every single avenue. I mean, for so long we were using electroconvulsive therapy. Now we're finding other better ways to be able to fix people with schizophrenia and all these other types of things. So I'm like, if a person is unredeemable, I guess it depends on the act because I consider some acts worse than others. Obviously, any act that hurts a child is an issue. Um, but an act like you were talking about, someone going to kill somebody and then someone defending themselves, you're still doing the same exact fucking thing, but we think about it differently because now you are defending your life. The example you used is the giant example that vegans used against meat eaters. So the example is if I asked you, if you're in the middle of the wilderness and you're with your child and a bear comes to attack your child and you kill that animal, vegans don't see that as right. And I think
Mhm.
they're also correct as well too, because the same answer I would give them is the same answer you would probably give. If anybody's going to try and kill me, a bobcat or a bear or my child, I'm going to fucking kill that thing or defend myself. But you
Mhm.
also have to think in the grand aspect of things is that imagine being that bear and you see a person walking across your path in your fucking home because they decided they wanted to get extra steps on their fucking Fitbit. Like you're in that person's territory. You have a right. The bear has a right to defend itself or attack you because you're in its home. You've encroached on its space. So I understand the vegans in that aspect. But to say that someone is unredeemable, have you tried every avenue? Have we given convicts psychedelics and noticed that they change their mind when they go through a huge DMT experience or when they go through a psychedelic experience? Who's to say that if you find some type of technology to enter in somebody's memory database and be able to bring them back to a certain moment in their life where the fork happened, where their life went completely a different way, they went askew, they had the snap, I would say, like in true crime, people talk about the shoe killer, the guy that was always hiding under dressing rooms and like women's shoes, would always try on women's shoes in his mom's closet, and his mom would lock him in there and beat the shit out of him, do all this crazy shit, which is why he killed women and took their shoes. If you go back to that moment and fix that type of thing in their mind. You don't have to go back in time and fix that. I'm talking about go back into their memories and reprogram that memory to make it think completely different of that scenario. Would they still turn out to be the same exact person to do the same exact heinous act? That's why I believe everybody is redeemable. Now, there are some things, if someone
Nature
was,
versus nurture is what you're asking.
well, if someone was going to kill my child, I would want that person to die. But if they could tell me that they could go back to that moment that that person had that snap that caused them all these years later to harbor all this hatred and harbor this type of dis-emotion or this disconnect where they would harm another person's kid and fix that moment, that person is technically redeemed. I'm not saying you have to invent time travel to go back to stop
Mhm.
something from happening, but go back into
Sure.
that person's mind and make sure that memory of that pain or whatever that is gone. And maybe that would fix the person. But this also goes back to what we're saying about, do you need to be seasoned? Do you need to go through some shit to understand a better perspective? In some cases, it's a very good positive, but in a lot of cases as well, it's not so good. It snaps that person, it changes them forever. So I don't know about people being unredeemable. I just think that every option for that specific person. The issue is in our society when we want to fix something or we want to correct change, we create a template and I guess expect society to work off that template. And I'm like, each individual person is uniquely different. Find you gotta, if we cannot create the time to be able to invest into one person and find and get them the help that they need, then we need to look at our options here. And our options need to be, why don't we have the time? Because as far as I know, you have multiple lives, or you have your own life, and as much time as you want to invest in multiple people that are willing to get paid to invest the time and to trying to find out what made this person get there. Maybe it takes 60 years, maybe it takes 70 years. But to say that nobody is redeemable and it's just easier to just kill someone, to me is not right. That was the weirdest fucking thing I have just seen on your fucking video, was that cat tail just flick right by your eyebrow. But no, seriously though, think about that question about being redeemable. Every
Well,
option or avenue has to be explored.
I mean, I get what you're saying, but are we to assume that there are no people that are broken before birth?
Then that means
We're assuming that.
but that doesn't mean there's a memory issue. Then that means there's a biological issue that you need to fix, a genetical issue. That means our technology needs to get to that point where we can explore those options or avenues. Everything has another scenario to it. If someone is a killer, if someone has a genetic birth defect, there's a technology or something that you should be able to do to try and fix that. What I'm saying is that I don't think anybody is unredeemable. I think there are people that can be redeemed, but that option or avenue is locked, and we have not explored or thought of that situation yet.
Well, I suppose so, but that kind of raises some ethical issues as well, because then we're assuming that, we have to assume that there's a norm, um, like a baseline norm for certain things, and for certain things there are. Obviously, like,
Killing
we can
somebody.
assume. Well, I was thinking something much less dramatic, but I'm thinking about, like, along the lines of, say, like autism. Um, there are people who have autism who wouldn't be who they are if they weren't autistic. And what I'm thinking of, when I say that, is like the ability to relate to other people, the ability to perform certain types of artistic functions, um, that maybe if these people were not, but then, like, does that, because they have autism, you're going to have a certain percentage of people who say, well, that's a genetic defect, and you're going to have other, you know,
Well, that's when CRISPR gets
portions of the
involved.
population. What's that?
That's when CRISPR gets involved.
CRISPR.
CRISPR is that thing that where they're able to fix genetic anomalies or genetic birth defects in the womb before the baby's born, so they don't have to experience being blind, or they don't have to. But it also goes to the extreme where someone's like, "I don't like my kid having brown eyes. I want him to have blue," and then you can change the baby's eye color in the fucking womb. But there are things where they're able to now fix mental retardation or things of that sort, birth defects now in the womb and before the baby's
Well,
born.
you do know that there's like entire, like, organizations of people, like entire organizations dedicated to, or who want to see, like, the population of the world with Down syndrome, because people who have Down syndrome are a lot less likely
They're
to.
compliant.
They're compliant. Yeah, exactly. And so, like, that goes into, like, the whole, like, well,
Well, that
is
means
autism or Down syndrome or these various different types of what are would be considered, like, by the mainstream, is to be like mental defects or whatever, are they really defects?
no, in some cases, I
Dunning
think they see in some cases, I think they see the purest form of what's there rather than what we see, which is like,
sure.
if a mentally challenged person, I remember a kid I grew up with would always say blue, blue, blue. And you're like, what is he talking about? And you notice he's looking at the sky and seeing like the blue sky that no one really notices because we're so paying attention to what's in our own head or what's on our phone rather than what's happening in front of us.
Mhm.
But maybe if we go back to the power thing. Now you're talking about someone that has an upper hand wants the people to be dumber than them so they can feel like they have more power. That's a power thing. That means that the issue isn't the person with the birth defect. The issue is the person that has that mentality that they want to be more
Right.
powerful than somebody. So you need to fix that
Exactly.
person.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was just gonna say. Then you have, like, this whole Dunning-Kruger effect sort of thing, where, like, this person thinks they're better than other people because they don't experience the same, you know, they don't have the same challenges to overcome or the same experiences. You know what I mean? Like,
They start up on a better platform. Like when you talk about a kid being born into wealth rather than a kid earning it, they start with more chips in their hand, I would say.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and that, there's a lot of there's a lot of like moral questions that raises, a lot of moral implications that are involved with that, and with making the decision as to like, what is a mental defect? Where do we draw the line? You know what I mean? And I think that we are discovering that more and more today, especially, like I hate reality shows, but I put them on a lot just to like have shit on in the background, like just while I'm doing things throughout the day, I'll just have some noise or
My
whatever
name is
going on.
Brittany, bitch.
Well, and I'm like more like Ghost Encounters, shows like Ghost Encounters or Ghost Brothers, and like alien shows. It's like weird little conspiracy shit like that going on. You know what I
Have
mean?
you ever seen the History Channel during the day? It's like showing how they built the pyramids.
Mm,
And then I guess they
mhm.
do a shift change at like 1 o'clock in the morning and they show a fucking starship from Star Wars in the background at 1 a.m. You're like, oh, what the fuck? They just told me how they built the pyramids and they have this alien ship at 1 o'clock in the morning when you're watching that marathon.
Right? Exactly. And that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly the type of stuff I'm talking about. So, but the other day I was like, had something on in the background, and they were talking about this place called Letchworth Village, and it's up in somewhere like in New York. And during the 70s, ABC News went in and did like a expose on this place or whatever, and they had like these some of these people like who lived there had no, like they weren't, I don't know, they didn't have need to be in an asylum. They were physically disabled, but they weren't mentally disabled. And then some of them were mentally disabled, and some of them were like severely mentally disabled. But like they would have like 80 people to a floor and only two workers working like this entire floor full of stuff, full of stuff, full of people. But like the stuff like, that was being unattended to, like the children weren't being clothed and bathed properly, and there was feces on the floor,
Yeah.
and like they were feeding like 80 people with one spoon,
I
with the
can,
same spoon and shit. And
how about,
that shit continued until like they didn't even close this place down until like 1996 for these things, man. This was stuff that was being shown in like the 70s, and it's like archaic, barbaric treatment of people who were in need of help, who aren't receiving the help. And that shit continued until the like 1996.
what'd you say the name of this place
1996.
was?
Letchworth Village, man.
Okay. Have you ever heard of Willowbrook State School?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Willowbrook State School was a old Army medical hospital
Mm-hmm.
that ended up getting turned into a school where they would basically, back in the day, and it sounds horrible now, but back in the day, parents, if they had a mentally challenged kid, the easiest thing for them to do was to open up their door and say, get the fuck out of the car, and then drop their kids off at this school and never pick them up again. So they would test
Mm-hmm.
these kids. They would lock them in rooms, like 40 people to a room, where they would be shit all over the floor. And how they would shower them and bathe them is they would spray them down with a hose while they were naked
Hose.
standing in a room. There are
Mm-hmm.
pictures of this you can look up, but if you Google it, Willowbrook State School, the first thing is a Wikipedia article. If you click the Wikipedia article, it doesn't say anything about what the school is about. But then if you look up, go scroll down in results, they have a bunch of real truths behind it, and they show you pictures of these kids. It's very, very sad, but that was the solution
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of people back then, and now we know better ways to be able to handle that. They're treated a lot better. What I'm saying is society hasn't evolved to the point of trying every single method, and it takes 10 to 15 years to be able to do so. So why aren't we looking at more methods
Sorry.
rather than just going to the same example we used for so long, which is just easier to kill somebody?
Right. Eugenics. Um, you know, wouldn't it would almost be better in some cases just to perform some method of euthanasia once you look at like how the people are being treated and how they're being cared for, and like
Yeah,
that's
but
not
we shouldn't have to think of euthanasia because they're being treated this way. Instead, we should figure out, why aren't we treating this issue of how we're treating
right.
these people? Why aren't we looking at this
Right.
in a different way? Just
Absolutely.
because it's a life's a life. For instance, when you see a murderer that has killed 80,000 people and he's getting sent to death penalty, it's seen as like good. He fucking killed all those people. He needs to pay for his crimes. wouldn't, if you believe in a higher power, wouldn't that person pay in their afterlife? Why are we going to send them there faster? Why don't we? They should be able to, they should be put through a trial and trying to figure out why the fuck this person had gotten to this point of doing so. We use experiments all the time where people do experiments on things, or like Operation Paperclip. We forgave all those people for doing those horrible experiments because we wanted the research. Why don't you put the time
Right.
and effort to stop this from happening again? You got to figure out how a person can get to a point where all emotion is lost with another person and understand how that came to be, not just simply be like, kill it so we can get rid of this problem, because there's always going to be that problem occurring if you don't focus on what's causing that issue. You need to focus on these aggressors, these situations that stress a person out, that get them to this point of doing so. And in some cases, I'm like I said, I'm on both sides of this. I think there's a point to it, and I think there's not a point to it. There's a big fucking issue when it comes to the fact that right now, in this time period that we're living in right now, this year alone, this month, there's going to be more, even the next month, there's going to be even more of mental health issues than it is in the past. And it's constantly
Mhm.
speeding up. And I'm trying to figure out, why are we trying to figure out giving a person a pill? Why are we trying to find ways to stop people from committing suicide when we're not looking at the core problem that's bringing them to that fucking point? There's something, a bunch of aggressive situations or a bunch of stressors that are causing people to turn to this type of thing where mental health is increasing. What's increasing the mental health? Just because you're finding ways to be able to help it or cure it, you can't cure mental health. You can help it out. You can null it down a little bit. But what's causing the mental health? What's getting people this? What's making it exposed a little bit more?
Sure. There's a lot of issues to address there. Um, First of all, I think that the reason why medication exists, and I hate to see people put on medication for this type of shit. Um, but I think that the reason why a lot of medication is prescribed is because we don't have the time to sit down and treat the each individual problem on an individual basis. Like we don't have enough for every mentally well person in the world, quote unquote, there's a mentally unwell person somewhere. And we all go through periods of mental wellness and mental unwellness, I think, in our like throughout our entire lives, like there's times whenever I think everybody sits down and contemplates the idea of suicide. And there's times when everybody sits down and has contemplated, the idea of physical violence towards another person. And, I don't care who you are or what you say about yourself. I think that as a human being, we've all experienced a full range of emotional
Roller
like
coaster.
input. Yeah, you know what I mean? So there's times, whenever I'm very mentally stable and emotionally stable. And there's other times whenever I shouldn't be evaluating the mental stability of somebody else because I'm not in a good mindset. And I think that finding that balance, you know what I mean? If we like really sat down and took the time to evaluate every situation on a case by case basis, we would find out that every person has to sit down with every other person and have a moment to talk and and then you get like the situations where like that's not going to work because maybe you and I don't have the same outlook on things,
Well,
and
don't you
maybe
think
I say
there's
something that you're going to get offended by, or maybe I'm going to intentionally try to offend. You know what I mean? There's just so much of a mix of there's like trillions and trillions and trillions of personality combinations, and none of them, I mean, some of them click together, most of them don't.
Well,
There's
hold on.
things.
Don't you think there's like, it's like we're missing the first couple of steps and we're like trying to be the guy that can do 5 steps at a time while he's running up the stairs or something? Like we're missing the 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I think like if someone's feeling so
Mhm.
alone to the point where they have to call a suicide hotline, or to the point where they have to call a helpline just to be able to talk to someone, then that's a community issue.
Mhm.
That's an easy fix right there. When we talk about like we know the answer, now it's just implementing it. Now it's trying to create a community again. It's not easy, but that we know what the issue is and we know how we could fix the issue by creating a better community. That's what I mean by easy fix. Now,
Right.
when we talk about a person's having a bad day compared to having a good day, if a person's feeling super depressed because they maybe feel like they're not where they should be in their life. Maybe they're 50, 60 years old and they have no retirement benefits or nothing on their mind. Maybe then we need to look at why this person had lost everything, and we look at the economy and we start looking at these core issues. If you start fixing up, like your car, for instance, are you just going to get uh new tires, or are you going to focus on a bunch of other things like getting your oil changed, getting a bunch of stuff done? It's like getting a new car interior and then not giving a shit about your engine or anything else. Then your car breaks down. Yeah, you can sit in your fucking car in the driveway, but the rest of the car's not fixed. You got to focus on when you bring your car into the shop for an oil change and they look over your car and they see a bunch of other things wrong with it that you need to fix. A lot of times it's better to get it done there, because if you choose to neglect that, it's going to end up hitting you later because you're going to forget about it and you're just going to be so like, I think I'm okay. You're never usually okay. Something bad happens down the road because you tend to neglect the things that you should be paying attention to. So, what in society, in our own lives, are we neglecting that most of the population is probably neglecting, that could be simple fixes? That's why health is being so important right now. A lot of people are paying attention to the physical, and now it's swinging back to the emotional. A lot of people are noticing these types of things with the pandemic, for instance. When you lock a bunch of people down, they started realizing, the CDC even said, CDC started blaming like the mayors and the governors of their own fucking state, saying you can't be doing this because it's worse than what they're like. Wait a minute, you fucking told us to put people on lockdown. Now you're saying you're not involved with it at all. They're like, no, because they realized how big the backlash was. The
Mm-hmm.
fear of being infected with COVID wasn't as bad as shutting down a business or making people stay inside their homes where they can't work, because it was creating another problem that was way worse than getting sick with COVID. That might
Mm-hmm.
sound and might piss a lot of people off hearing that, but it's 100% true. The CDC originally said that you need to be on lockdown. You need to do all these things. Your state should be doing this. The mayors, the governors, everyone should be implementing this. They all did that, and they saw a very, very big backlash that they never thought of. And then all these mayors and governors were being blamed for it. And the CDC says, you need to open back up. You can't do these to your people. And they're like, hang on a second. You fucking told us to do this. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're saying you're not involved at all? It's like me and you
Well,
go 50-50 into a house, and then I leave you with the full 100% because I just didn't like the way it looked.
it's and a lot of this is like it's ignorant to believe anyway that whenever you give somebody the order that, oh, you got to stay indoors, you got to be locked down, that there's not going to be some sort of major backlash, especially in the United States. I'm not the world's smartest man, but I saw all that shit coming along, as it was fucking unfolding. I was like, oh, yep, this is a bad idea, and oh, yep, this is a bad idea, and this isn't going to help anything. And the more they've fucked us around, and the more that they've played with this, the worse it's gotten, the worse it's gotten. And none of the stuff that they did really, they knew how many. I mean, if you go back to December of 2019, they were already calling 500,000 American deaths. They were already making that assumption, those numbers. Then, no matter what they did with lockdowns, face masks, blah, 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 all this stuff, we hit the exact target numbers that they were predicting 9 months earlier. Exactly. Like almost to the death, to the sickness. You know what I mean? They knew how this was going to play out. And then they went ahead and did all this stuff anyway, and they got to the exact number that they said it was going to happen before it fucking happened, man. And who in their right, like, motherfuckers, wake up out there, look around you. All the preventative measures that we've taken led to exactly the numbers that were predicted. And that's with all the people who didn't follow the procedures, and all the people who didn't, they already knew, man. There's a fucking game called Plague Inc. where you can track this shit, man.
Yeah.
And the fucking CDC went and got this dude who fucking developed Plague Inc. and was like, how did you develop your algorithms? Because this is exactly the way we expect shit to go down. And they're able to fucking predict it, man. They knew how many people were going to die.
Have you heard the theories of how it spread?
Uh,
So the
I've heard a
main one that
lot of theories.
the one that everyone's heard is that it was created in a lab somewhere, and then originally
Mm-hmm.
it came from, now it was from a bat. Well,
Mm-hmm.
there was another one too called the penguins, not penguin, penguins.
Penguin. Okay, yeah.
Penguins. So these penguins is like another thing, like it's not really like a penguin. It's another bird, but they just have the same similar names. But they think that this thing got infected and then it somehow traveled all these miles and started infecting a bunch of people. And they think that's how it spread. There was another one too that they also went through and verified that this wasn't true. Like as in it didn't come from this. They did it.
Mhm.
They did all the drastic measures to be able to check it, but it didn't come from
Right.
this. There was a frozen food ban. They were checking popsicles, they were checking ice cream, they were checking all these things, thinking that's what was causing it was this COVID thing. And it turns out that wasn't true. A lot of people don't know this, but all these drastic things where people are blaming bats and blaming all these things, they went through and they checked all this shit out. They went through and they did all these. If I tell someone there was a popsicle ban, they're like, what? It's like, yeah, they were checking every frozen food department, every frozen food truck,
Mhm.
everything that was sent to delivery, thinking this is how it was spreading because that was a thought that was going out there. There's a
Yep.
lot of shit out there that it might, and here's the weird part about how we look at it. We look at it as the economy shutting down and people are losing their jobs and I have to wear a fucking mask. Do you know how China's looking at it?
They're taking over the fucking world.
Hang on a second. You know how China's looking at this?
Yeah.
Is that when the truth comes out or whatever this thing comes out, no matter how wrong Fauci is or no matter how wrong whatever it is, the wrong parts don't really matter. What matters is trying to find the truth. Even if
Mhm.
that truth refutes everything you've said, it doesn't. This is the issue: is we're not backpedaling. Everything we've already put out there,
Mhm.
probably the truth is in the back, and then they've already
Mhm.
established so much that they can't just backpedal. They have to find a way to work around it. So it's going to take us even
Right.
longer. But the way China is thinking about it is 500,000 people are dead. That's 500,000 people, each with an individual lawyer. That's how they're thinking of it. And this comes from a podcast on Joe Rogan. I think his name is Josh Rogan. Same last name, but spelled differently.
Mhm.
And he's a journalist and he works like in all these Congress meetings and all these things. He's been there and he's talked about it. He goes, the way that China's thinking about this is now that there's 500,000 or how many people have died. And he goes, now imagine each one of those bodies with a lawyer. That's how they're thinking of
Mhm.
it. How is this going to impact us financially? How is this going to impact us this? And you would think we would get over our high horse about it and just worry about reopening and forgetting all of this behind us. But so many people are like, man, if the fucking truth comes out, that's a lot of people that are going to be suing us. And it's like, oh my God, you're fucking worried about your power and your money over just the happiness and this the prosperness of your own fucking country.
Over the fucking cost of human life. You know
So
what I mean?
that's the
Like,
big question. What's the price? What's the price of a life?
well, the cost of a lot of places it's less than the cost of a bullet.
That's why I said it's good to do a mental health check on guns. Someone's like, well, if you're gonna kill yourself with a gun's not gonna stop you from killing yourself. I'm like, I know so many people that they just don't have a gun, and so doing a rope is a lot harder. So if they had a gun, I bet you they wouldn't be there. Like my buddy, for instance, rest in peace, said he was gonna shoot himself in the head, and he fucking shot himself in the head.
Mhm.
You know, it's an easier way. But that means instead of trying to work on like that means we need to ban all guns. No, 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 no. We need to figure out why someone is being pushed to the point where they feel the need to stick a gun in their mouth. Why?
Mhm.
What is that? What is that? You're telling me it's because the world is sucking? You're telling me because everything they walk out is hate? Okay, then how can we fix that? Well, I don't want to incentivize. I don't want to give people $50,000 to be nice to someone because that creates fake people. I want to try
Right.
and figure out what do you need in your life to make you happy. Well, I wish my job wasn't so bad. Okay, well, what's your job? What's going on in your job? Well, I'm the only one working and I work all these shifts. Okay, then maybe your job, you need a better supervisor. You need something. Maybe you should step up and bring up some suggestions. Sometimes even talking out the problem you end up finding out the fucking solution. It's not that hard to think, and it's really easy to say, but a little bit harder to do. But if you really
Mm.
sit here and talk about the problems and be like, well, I got this fucking thing going on. Well, okay, well, just get another perspective on it. That person will see something that you don't see because it's so hard. The reason why therapists all have their own therapists is because you can't diagnose yourself. You can't. Someone else has to do that fucking for you. Someone else has to be able to give you
Mm-hmm.
the insight because you're already so involved with it. The problem's already fully surrounded you. Sometimes you need a person looking from the outside, looking in, saying, hey, if you just do it this way, it's 1,000 times easier.
Right. And that's kind of what I was trying to get at earlier, when I was talking about, like we all would have to sit down and talk with each other, spend 5 minutes alone with one another to really solve the problem, I think. And that's why medication is such a, it's just the way they hand out meds like they do Pez candies, you know what I mean? Like, oh,
Like,
here,
open up
take
your
this, take
mouth,
this, take this.
and they
We
throw a
just
bunch of
really
pills
don't
at you.
have, right. Well, like, honestly, you and I sit down, we talk to each other, we're friends, we have time to communicate with each other, and whatever. Yeah, fuck off. But not everybody does that, and not everybody has that, and not everybody has like a release for somebody to talk to. And there are people who talk to me that sometimes I'm just like, why are you talking to me? I would never tell somebody that in real life because I don't want them to feel that like
That's
I'm gonna go eat a bullet now.
That's because I believe that you say that we have frequencies. I'm starting to
Mm-hmm.
think more and more that there's something in our genetic DNA sequence that just connects more with another person. I know plenty of
Mm-hmm.
people that I'll have the same conversation with that I'm having with you, but if I'm talking to them, it'll never go this far because in my head, I'm like, I don't want to fucking be in this conversation. I want to use as few words as possible just to get out of this and go do what I want to do because we just don't connect. There's not that some type of draw that like you'll meet like your best friend, for instance. There's something about that person that just resonates with you that you feel a deeper connection with, whether that's involved in a conversation when you learn more about a person, or whether it's just something about their fucking smell or something about them that just is a fucking appealing to your genetic code. I'm starting to think that there's
Mm-hmm.
a certain number of sequences in your genetic code that is making you compatible with a lot of people, which makes an issue
Right.
for a country as big as ours that has so many different cultures in it. There's a lot of clashing genetic codes that are going on. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not saying, immigration's bad. I'm saying that it's a lot for a country that hasn't sorted out itself yet. It's a
Right.
it's a giant thing right now. I mean, I don't even want to get into the political stuff, to be honest with you, but it's a thing when it comes to the concept of, I think that we need to pay attention to subtle things around us that are causing us to be aggressive with a bunch of people that we're probably
Absolutely.
not compatible with.
If we all sat around and thought, it's just somebody said something to me the other day. I didn't think that this would have the impact that it had. And that's the problem. We don't stop and think about how the things what we say, what we do, how that's going to impact the people directly across from us, the people behind them, the people that are like, there's everything has some sort of residual impact. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna, and we have to stop and think to ourselves, like, because I have the right to be offensive, do I need to be offensive? Do I really need to say something that's going to set this person off, and then that person is going to put out energy that's going to disturb all of this? It causes a ripple effect, man. Everything that we do has some sort of ripple effect, whether it's good, whether it's bad, and we don't stop and think about that. Like I don't stop and think about like how what if I shine the light on this person, and expose this thing that they're doing that's negative, and how the people that like them are going to react to that. You know what I mean? So like I got somebody who says, hey, like me and them are, have our issue or whatever, but behind closed doors, they tell me, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. And then I go and say, hey, look, this person said, fuck you, blah, blah, blah. Well, the person that's over here is friends with that person and they're friends with me. But maybe they don't like the fact that, like I am coming out and saying, exposing this about this person. You know what I mean? They don't want to see that about this person. And they think that I'm a bad person for saying, well, this person told me, fuck you. And so I should stop and think, like, do I need to bring this to light? Is this something, because this is going to have a ripple effect? This is going to affect people that know them. This is going to affect, you know what I mean? And we don't stop and think about that. We just are like, this person pissed me off, so I'm going to expose this person, this person's secrets for whatever. And maybe that was something that was told to me in confidence, or maybe that was something that, that person didn't necessarily think was going to get shared with the entire world whenever they told me. And for me to expose that is, I should stop and think about what I'm going to do. Stop and think about what I'm going to say. Stop and think about how those words or that action, those frequencies are going to interact with the frequencies of people, not only in my direct circles, but in the circles of maybe other people or that aren't in my direct line of sight, because it's going to. Everything we do affects it's butterfly effect, man. You know, butterfly flaps its wings on one side of the world, a fucking atom bomb explodes on the other, whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like whatever the energy is, spooky interaction at a distance, quantum entanglement, whatever the fuck you want to call it, man. Like we're all interconnected in some way. Everything that has energy is connected in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And you can't refute that. I don't care. Like, change my mind. Anybody, you know, fucking, you can find me right here, Rusty's underscore customs.
It's funny you said that because we're about hitting up on the 2 hour mark.
Mm-hmm. I kind of had that feeling, but yeah, you know, I feel like it's a good outro for the program. Maybe, you know, like we can, people, if you disagree with what I'm saying, you know, change my mind.
Send
But
them
the
a
simple,
DM.
yeah, send me a
Lots of dick
DM.
pics.
No dick pics, thank
No,
you.
nutsack pictures only. Everybody always sends the
But yeah,
dick. What about the balls? Send the
so
balls.
you know, dude, the balls never get any love. I love my balls. Love your balls.
I just wish they'd stop getting in the way.
That's just there to remind you, bro.
You ever do a jog and then they're just fucking hitting you and you're like, oh my
Dude,
God.
everything I do, they're in the way, man. If I sit down, they're in the way. If I jog, they're in the way. If I fucking, dude, they're always in the way. But it's a gentle reminder, you know, it's the bitter with the sweet.
I'm ending on bitter with the sweet.